Hello there. My name's Don Kudo. I'm the chapter president for the Ontario Public Works Association. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's PW Connects webinar. This webinar, of course, is called How to Reconstruct and Widen a Road Through a Wetland and Conservation Area. It's presented to you from staff from Durham Region. And this webinar is part of the Ontario Public Works Association Public Works Connects program. And it's put on by our OPWA Education Committee. And we do monthly webinars. And I'd like to first just start off with a few introductory notes about OPWA and how our organization works and how you can get involved. Okay, we'll just wait for this slide to advance and we'll get on with today's agenda. Okay, so I'll just click here, see what I can do here. There we go. Okay, so just to let you know that OPWA is a not-for-profit organization. We're public works professionals. The Ontario chapter is the largest Canadian chapter in the APWA organization. We have close to almost 600 members in our organization, and we're quite the wide variety of membership through public agencies, consulting engineers, and various organizations. We have two branches. We have a branch in the Ottawa Valley branch region and also in the West Central branch region in the Niagara area. And our mission statement is to connect the public works community. And we do that through various committees, events, networking events, of course, and awards and education. As far as awards go, this webinar actually highlights one of our award-winning projects, that 2021 award for environmental excellence. We had a great sold-out National Public Works Week event last spring, and the Durham region with this project did win the environmental award. OPWA depends quite a bit on sponsorship, so I'd like to recognize our sponsors to help us and our organization provide to connect the public works community. Here's our diamond level sponsor, platinum level sponsors as well, a number of gold sponsors, and silver, and finally our bronze sponsors. So as mentioned, we host a number of events. The PW Connects monthly webinars happen, of course, every month. We have ones coming up in October. Will feature the York Transit Yonge Street Rapid Bus Transit project, which won not only an OPWA award, but also won a APWA North American Wide Project of the Year award. The next big event that OPWA will be hosting will be the Right-of-Way Management Conference in Ajax. And then we'll head it back into our 2023 schedule, where we host ski events, International Women's Days event, golf event, National Public Works Week, technology showcase, so many things that OPWA can offer the public works community. So getting back to this slide, if any of these events, membership committees interest you, I encourage you to volunteer for our organization. Come and join our organization. And there's many ways that you can get involved with the public works community. So please check out our webpage, and that'll be some ways for you to connect with us. So here's some rules and the way we're going to operate today for today's webinar. Of course, your microphones have been muted and cameras are off. Questions, you can put them in the Q&A box, and we will get to those Q&A questions at the end of the session. The Q&A is located at the bottom of your screen, so just click and enter. And yeah, today's webinar will be approximately 1 hour long, and hope you enjoy the content. So just to speak to today's webinar, a brief introduction: the reconstruction and widening of Victoria Street in Durham Region through the Lynde Shores Wetland Complex and Conservation Area is probably the most complex and environmentally challenging project the Region of Durham has ever taken on. The project won a 2021 OPWA Environmental Project of the Year Award in the $10 to $50 million category, and it also won a Transportation Association of Canada Award, a TAC Environmental Achievement Award. Today we have two presenters from Durham Region. We have Ron Trewin, a Senior Project Manager of Transportation Design. Ron's been with the region for over 25 years and has been recognized by the Ontario Good Roads Association for 40 years of service. Ron has been leading projects in both the transportation design and construction and management services area. Ben McQuaid is a project manager, construction management services, and Ben's been a project manager with Durham Region for 9 years. And Ben helped work closely with Ron on the administration of this project. So I'll call on, I guess, Ron and Ben to present to you today. So thank you very much for joining and enjoy the session.
Okay, so first I'm going to share. Okay, there. And okay. How to reconstruct and widen a major arterial road through a wetland conservation area. This title actually Don helped me with. I had a more boring title, and the how-to came part of this. I thank OPWA for the recognition of our project on Victoria Street and for reconstruction and widening with the 2021 Environmental Project of the Year Award. I also thank OPWA for setting up this presentation and strongly promote, us learning from each other as engineers. This reconstruction and widening project through the Lynde Shores Wetland Complex, Don said maybe most technically challenging complex project. I'll say it is the most challenging complex environmental project the region of Durham has ever undertaken. What I'm going to do now is just have a video quickly of the Victoria Street.
The Victoria Street project, which spanned the sensitive wetlands of Lynde Shores Conservation Area, was completed over 6 years, widening 1.5 kilometers of Victoria Street from 2 to 4 lanes. To limit construction disruptions to traffic and to the waterfront trail, there were no weekday road closures, and 2 lanes of traffic were maintained. The project included 2 new structures crossing the Lynde Creek and Lynde Creek tributary, 2 wildlife crossing culverts, a new multi-use path, a soil system retaining wall, and a new storm system to direct drainage from open water. To mitigate for the loss of wetland habitat from the road widening, the region constructed an eastern pond mussel habitat and the new Shisco wetland in Lynde Shores Conservation Area, providing an enhanced fish and reptile habitat. Durham Region thanks our project partners at the Central Lake Ontario Conservation Authority for their collaboration on this technically complex and environmentally challenging development project.
Thank you. So I just want to point out this project was the most rewarding project of my career. Victoria Street reconstruction and widening. Here, I particularly love this aerial photo of Victoria Street. It shows the North Pond to the left, and this is to the left where we expanded this pond for species at risk, the eastern pond mussel. It shows the open water here to the south, the Great Lakes Waterfront Trail along the south side, and on the north side, the sheet pile wall. It shows along here, and this is the capstone. This project was completed over a period of 6 years and 5 contracts, and involved widening Victoria Street from 2 to 4 lanes for approximately 1.5 kilometers. In addition to the road widening, the project included 2 new bridge structures crossing Lynde Creek and also crossing the tributary of Lynde Creek, 2 wildlife crossings in addition to the bridges, new multi-use path, which serves as a vital connection for the Great Lakes Waterfront Trail, a continuous wildlife barrier, including a new retaining soil system, RSS wall on the south side of Victoria Street, and a steel sheeting on the north side, adjacent to the marsh on the north side of Victoria Street. The fence and wildlife barrier on the west sides was used of the project. Larger excavated pond to improve, as I shown before, improve the Victoria Street, to improve the eastern pond mussel habitat, which was our species at risk, which we had to go through DFO approval. The new Shishko wetland south of Victoria Street, and turtle nesting areas and new enhanced natural areas. One of the bridges was to replace at Lynde Creek, tributary was to replace a triple culvert. Regional 22 is which is Victoria Street in Whitby. This is basically it's the only continuous road, across 401 that goes through from Pickering, Ajax, Whitby, Victoria Street, and this Oshawa. In Oshawa as it is Bloor Street. Victoria Street serves as a vital connection also, for the EDR, for the emergency detour route for Highway 401. Throughout construction, the entire project had to be completed without any road closures. We also had to keep the waterfront trail open. There is no alternative routes for detouring. The environmental assessment confirmed that there were no acceptable alternatives. First, I would like to dispel any thought that we could close the road during construction or find another alternative to expand the road system. The AADP on this road is around 21,000 vehicles a day. This road was fully loaded and could not be closed during construction. We could not move the traffic north to the 401. It was fully loaded. We could not move it further to Dundas. It was fully loaded. We could also not move the traffic to Roslyn Road or Totten Road. In fact, the only place we could have moved to Highway 7 to 10 kilometers to the north. So closure was not an option. This slide, I just want to, this was part of the stage 2 Victoria Street. You can see it through the marsh area. And we also did the first stage of construction on Bailey Street, which was more typical construction. We did that in 2012 and 2013. The stage 2, through our wetland was actually done, constructed between 2015 and 2021. The environment of the road. The original 2-lane rural Victoria Street traveled through a portion of the Lynde Creek Coastal Wetland Complex, which extends from Lake Ontario to Highway 401. The wetland is designated as provincially significant wetland It's an area of natural and scientific interest and is regulated by the Ontario Conservation, Central Lake Ontario Conservation Authority as part of the Lynde Shores Conservation Area. This wetland is busy with wildlife. I could be hiking for hours in the North Ridge, the Oak Ridges Moraine and see no wildlife. Maybe hear a crow or a squirrel in the distance. Not in this wetland. Turtles, swans, fish jumping, geese, ducks, kingfisher, deer, muskrat, snakes, frogs, insects, along with other wildlife are all here. I've had deer jump out in front of me, scare the bejeebus out of me. 2-lane Victoria Street. The original 2-lane road was with narrow shoulders, had the highest mortality rate in the region of Durham for wildlife. And the existing Victoria Street was threatening many of the species. CLOCA during the EA had completed a study of the wildlife mortality on Victoria Street. One of the results was the death poster of CLOCA, produced showing all the various wildlife that has been killed on the traffic, by the traffic in the area of Victoria Street. Truly, the original 2-lane road was impacting wildlife. Great Lakes Waterfront Trail. Until this section of Great Lakes Waterfront Trail was constructed, as part of this project, it was considered the missing link. With a caution note on maps warning users. Cyclists used to use the granular shoulders, crossing the bridge over. In the middle, you can see where the bridge crossing was for the waterfront trail. Watching cyclists crossing at the bridge was quite nerve-wracking. And watching cyclists along the unpaved shoulders was also nerve-wracking. The project environmental solutions. The region and its partners with CLOCA and consultants had to work through many challenges to address the environment of the wetland, to provide additional mitigation for the road widening. This required us to learn and adopt new best management practices. I had to, I'm an engineer. I'm a civil engineer. I'm not a biologist. But this was my project, our project, and we had to basically, the construction staff, we had to learn to work with the wildlife. Moving the widening, moving the road entirely to, was to the north side, as you see here, away from the open water, was one of the major decisions that was made during the environmental assessment that was really important. This was a really big decision. This especially became true that the eastern pond mussel became a species at risk following the environmental assessment and, during the design period. So it became more critical. Environmental assessment established that a grade raise was required at the new Lynde Creek Bridge to provide higher clearance for wildlife and for stream flows. This grade raise led to the requirement of retaining walls in both the north and south sides of Victoria Street to minimize the impact of the wetland. These walls also acted as a barrier for the wildlife. Wildlife exclusion fencing was added to the western half. As you can see here, you can see the fencing, the barrier, basically going for our target species. This is where the walls were not, west of where the walls were. Originally, our environmental assessment, proposed armor stone walls. On the north side, we would have to build out further into the marsh if we constructed armor stone walls so that we could actually found them on something, so we went with sheeting instead, and our consultants was recommending sheeting. And you can see on the picture on the left, the cattails growing right up to the sheeting, and that's a capstone on top that we constructed later. Wildlife crossings. The environmental assessment originally recommended 7 crossings with 4 dry crossings. Best management practices changed from the EA to design and became much more, we started understanding much more of the needs of crossings. This partly is from work that was done in Alberta and in other parts of Canada. The passages need to be larger, openness ratio. The wildlife needs to see also clearly the other side of the passage that they're going to. And white-tailed deer crosses at the Lynde Creek Bridge. That's the only crossing we have. That's the crossing we have for them. The bridge was originally made higher to allow the deer. And, originally, this design was also to meet the navigable waters approval. But the federal regulators got rid of this, the navigable waters requirements during the Harper government. And, but we still have to build them for the deer crossing, the additional height. Stormwater management and drainage was a major concern on this. How do you drain a 1 kilometer flat area? Raising the bridge provided grade. However, we still had to drain a low area away from the open water. Managing the stormwater, including drainage from the road with high salt content from winter road maintenance, was challenging. It had to be carefully designed. Key feature was that the 4 lanes all drained to the north. We basically had reverse crown and all drained to the north away from the open water. Stormwater throughout the project was further directed away from the open water, from that pond, for instance, the eastern pond mussel habitat, the pond we created and expanded. But it had to be designed with safe swales, ditches, small storm sewers, and infiltration features. This aerial photo is the entire project. In the bottom left, you'll see the Shishko wetland. It's under construction at this point, the time. In the top right corner is the Lynde Creek Bridge. Then we have the tributary bridge. And this is the farm that the CLOCA owned, which we used here for passage of, for drying muck and for some excess material. The waterfront trail is protected from the adjacent vehicles with a guide rail and implemented wood backing. This was a feature, we felt that the, to protect cyclists from the guide rail metal post. And we also, as you see here, the pathway, the multi-use path is about 0.4 meters lower to reduce the weight and settlement. All through a proper trail was non-existent in this area. Trail users would cross through this segment. This bridge, like you also see on the bridge here to the left of the picture, the bridge is protected. This is the first protected bridge in the region where we protected the multi-use path. In lowering this section by 0.4 meters, we were able to reduce the weight over a gas main, large gas main, and also reduce the settlement in period, and then minimize our, reduce our problem. Another feature added to along the waterfront trail is a nature lookout. You've got all this waterfront trail, of course, we're going to have some kind of lookout, some kind of feature. Originally planned during the environmental assessment, this was supposed to extend out into the open water. The design was changed. It could not be cantilevered without piles due to the poor soils and the existing gas main. The gas main was approximately in this location. The use of piles was no longer an option, because of the species at risk and the eastern pond mussel habitat. The region AECOM instead designed a less intrusive lookout using lightweight cellular concrete. The finished product is the view from the from this lookout. Just absolutely gorgeous. To mitigate for the loss of wetland habitat from the road widening, the region constructed a new wetland just south of Victoria Street, inside a previously disturbed, unused area of Lynde Shores Conservation Area. This area used to be a golf range. The wetland is approximately 1.2 to 1.5 hectares in size, with a whole restored area about 5 hectares. This was written into our species at risk permit. The Shishka wetland cost us about $1.3 million. Originally, we were going to share this construction with another project. However, this did not happen. This area was originally proposed as pond mussel habitat for species at risk. DFO experts did not accept this option as they didn't feel that the host fish would be able to transfer up to here. DFO expert, in the end, we expanded the North Pond along Victoria Street. And that's why, that was very particular for our species at risk. CLOCA would still promoted this compensation for mitigation of all the habitat we basically destroyed as part of our road widening. And it's compensation or mitigation. I don't like to use the word compensation so much, but I do like mitigation. Technically challenging. Our most challenging project environmental has also been our most challenging project geotechnically. This difficulty is added to as a result of Victoria Street not only being an important road and not also being an important connecting corridor, which has included hydro, fiber optics, and natural gas. And hydro could not be relocated, for instance. Just before approval for relocation of the final hydro relocation design, it was determined, Lexicon determined that it could not relocate into the marsh due to the weak soils. We did not want them accidentally destroying it. I have to give, Viridian helped us, or Lexicon helped us with this. Basically what they did is they strengthened the wires. They basically improved the wire lines along Highway 2 and rerouted and down Lake Bridge and were able to reroute the whole area for about 6 months while they removed these wires. You'll see here in this picture, basically we did not want Hydro or Lexicon when they installed the poles destroying our tiebacks and that, so we installed vertical HDP pipes, which they could place their poles into once we completed filling. So this picture shows the detail of basically the cross section. You see here the existing road and the little higher here. And what we did is we had to treat the construction in 2 different ways. The majority of the road was on the north side where we expanded into the marsh. This was constructed with sheeting and with tiebacks, and we also had to use steel struts. Basically we had to use steel struts in here and also tiebacks, and I'll get into that. And this is lightweight cellular concrete. And underneath is the existing gas main, a 300 millimeter gas main, which is one of the older gas mains in the region of Durham. So here's a picture of the north side of the widening with the steel sheeting and the supports and the tiebacks and the granular preloading. You can also see here the steel struts, which were only required, for the period when we did the deep excavation of the, so that the marsh did not push into the area dug out. Near the bridge, we have sheeting on both sides. Further back, instead of sheeting being, where the tiebacks were tied to, we used concrete blocks. On the south side, this is largely where the existing road was. And we had, it's been compacting over many years and that, and basically, but we still had to raise the road a lot, and we didn't want, we had to control sediment. This, one of our challenges during our construction project, during a design, was the disappearance of our soils consultant over one weekend with no proper knowledge, no follow-up or anything. This was before our final reports were actually signed and before we actually had an acceptable solution for widening the south side. In fact, we were already into construction on the north side and we were still working out the details on the south side. I thank AECOM and I thank Raymond Miranda, our geotechnical consultant, who helped us, put this project together. Especially the south side using lightweight cellular concrete. You can see in this picture the tiebacks, the first level of tiebacks for the RS wall, and you can see the the various tiebacks here. Underneath the retaining wall, we used the denser cellular concrete. Of course, this project could only be told with construction. Construction is completed in 5 contracts, totaling 20.5 million over a 6-year period for an overall project cost of 27.7 million. All construction workers and staff were required to go through environmental training. Training was by our environmental consultant, Rudy Wormy, the BTE. I note our trained construction staff inspector were involved in an osprey rescue. You can see that on the right picture here. Basically, because they went through the training, our inspector knew who to call and had that on file right away. And this was, this kind of rescue could be done very quickly. Construction workers were part of this. We also had swans in here. We also, as you can see, a turtle, which was rescued. Swans are particularly hard to rescue sometimes because they have difficulty getting out of the work area, and they tend to fly off every time you get near them. So when I started the design for this project, I quickly found out that the wildlife windows left 2 weeks of construction a year. This really concerned me at first until I started looking at how to exclude the wildlife from the work area. Own the work area. I can't say that enough. First, we put up silt fencing. You see here on the left picture, you see silt fencing. Basically, that was to keep turtles out of our granular shoulders and out of our work area. Especially, they like to nest in this area. We also created, you can see on the right side, a nesting area that we created. It's fairly easy to create these nesting areas. All you do is dump a bunch of granular. They find it. We also had to use turbidity curtain. And you can see it's working well here. Working through construction challenges. Here we had the highest Lake Ontario water levels in over 100 years. How could we predict that? The former, our former pumping dewatering location was completely submerged. So we had to move it. Dewatering areas was totally flooded. So we had to construct another one further on dry land. This approach was taken that this was not a contractor's problem. It was together all of our challenge. And we had to work with the contractor on this. And right from the beginning, this was understood as part of this project. Be flexible and collaborative with the agencies. This project is located on sensitive environmental land that could only be successful with CLOCA, Central Lakes Ontario Conservation Authority. as our full partner. To give you an example, working with CLOCA to dry out the excavated muck that was excavated was very positive. You know, they basically rented us a part of their farm, which I had shown on the overall picture. This allowed us to reduce costs and use rock trucks to this area so that it could be dried. So we didn't have to take the excess, you know, material away in, you know, sloshing, especially through the winter months on our roads. During our project, we were able to save, you know, and reduce, you know, costs further by actually, you know, permanently storing some of the excess material in a berm that was between the farm and us. If you, in the old days, if you looked into the field, you could see deer. So we provided a bit of barrier. We'd plant trees on this, and CLOCA would allow us to save some money by not having to move this excess material. Flexibility with design and construction. It was necessary to be flexible, both in, you know, like I look at the wet passage here for in the construction. Right away, you see an old bridge above. This was not on our records, and it was not in found in our boreholes, this particular footing. It's not the first time constructing in a water course that we have found the old bridge abutments in drawings or boreholes that hit them. The wet wildlife passage turned out to be the old bridge, you know, like that was about 300 meters. It was the old bridge of Lynde Creek, which is some 300 meters away. Basically, the someday in the past, the engineer thought it was a great idea to move the whole structure so they could keep this open and construct at the same time. We also found in here Corduroy Road, which was also not found in the boreholes, and the utility locates. Restoration and working with the wildlife. The easiest thing to restore in a wetland is cattails or bulrushes. You restore this area with muck, you excavate and get out of the way. They just come up. You know, it didn't take long for the cattails to grow up in here. You can see it, you know, the next growing season, they're doing very well right against our sheeting. We're all planting water lilies. Also dealing with the deer, our fencing was, you know, only 1.2 meters high. It was not high enough to stop the deer jumping over, but it did dissuade the deer. They generally weren't jumping, you know, like, they also were not our target species to reduce mortality. We have lots of deer in this area. And it didn't seem a problem of vehicles hitting them in this area. There's more the turtles, the snakes, and all the other wildlife, the muskrats and that. During construction, you know, you can see first the top picture, good engineering practices. Our, you know, like our pump and that, and various equipment, it was basically protected from spills, you know, in this area. During construction, we not only had to maintain the 2-lane road, but we also had to maintain a trail of some sort. And all this is thin, it is a trail. And on the south side, this was the trail prior, you know, sorry, on the right picture, you see the trail before, while we're constructing the first stage of construction that we left open. It's basically a paved shoulder. Working with design and road standards. You know, this project, you know, we didn't want to, you know, we had to revise some of our standards. We had to work with the tax standards, with the provincial standards and everything. Here we, you know, we put 0.9 meters of asphalt in front of the curb. That allows with the curb about 1.2 meters from the actual face of hitting the guardrail. This is particular because of the new tax standards, which, you know, we couldn't move the guide rail back. We had to put it up with the curb, basically. 2-meter paved on the north side. Here, it's wide enough to allow emergency pull-off, barely, but it's also too narrow to dissuade parking. We did not want parking along this road. And also, you make that shoulder wider, you're going more into the marsh and more impact to the wetland. Keeping hydro, communication fibers and bell on the north side of the road to improve the view. You still see one cable on the south side. We're still working with Oshawa PUC to move this. Difficulty reducing adaptive. We also had difficulty during the design with adaptive lighting. I just want to, the lighting standards, we could have gone what they do in Florida where, lighting is reduced during the evening for turtles and things like that. That's difficult to have somebody, want to maintain that adaptive. All those lightings got reduced, they've got more shielding and they also reduce their focus more to the road. They're also designed for possible future adoption. We want to celebrate this project and work, and working together. We are pleased with our work with CLOCA. They have been an excellent partner throughout our project. For example, the opportunities to use excess soil. I just also want to point out the Shishko, the large excavation that we did for the water area, none of it left the conservation park area. We used the rest to build up basically higher areas and that which were treed later. A lot of those trees were through federal government programs. We thank Council for their lead and continuing financial support of this very important project. And we thank our contractors, Dagmar, Esposito, Coco Paving, and our construction management division, Ben McQuaid. This project required flexibility and technical understanding and experience. We thank our consultants, AECOM, who completed the design, and McCormick Rankin Corporation, who completed the environmental assessment, along with our geotechnical consultants. I thank environmental consultant Rudy Warmay for his guidance for his inspection, monitoring, and pictures on this project. CLOCA and the various agencies trust him. That's important. I also thank Paul G., my manager, who supported me during this project. Without that, this project could have not been done. Lessons learned. Create a good relationship with the Conservation Authority. Our relationship really paid off. For such a complex geotechnical project, make sure the geotechnical consultant is hired under a general consultant. This having the geotechnical consultant on one side and the general consultant on the other side in the design was difficult on such a challenging project. And in some cases, I was in the middle, which is not where you want to be. Plus, we also had the geotechnical consultant disappear during our design. Some differential settlements can be expected. Put the surface asphalt on 2 winters following. This definitely, there was some areas that did settle. It wasn't a big deal. It was just additional asphalt, additional, in resurfacing and that basically, and they were dealt with. Work with the utilities, especially Rogers, Oshawa PUC Fiber, they moved their plant over the weekend. And be quick to respond to inspected conditions. Manage the foundation conditions for an RS wall. This is, I learned the hard way. The shop drawings detailed that they wanted the foundation on competent soils. There is no competent soils for 10 meters. We're not going to excavate for the foundation of a retaining wall for 10 meters. In the end, what we did is we did a stronger symmetrics underneath and denser symmetrics, which is the cellular concrete, underneath the wall, and this supported. It almost floated on the muck underneath. Expect unknowns, high water levels, corduroy roads, unexpected bridge foundations, damage to barrier end treatments, which happened during, we actually had that in the contract so they could deal with it. Environmental training for construction inspection work. So here I want to get the questions. I just want to point out, helping me with the questions is Ben McQuaid from construction, who's been instrumental through this construction in helping. And basically, you can see a heron that's at our new Shishko wetland. You can see an inquisitive deer, which is right from the conservation area.
Well, great. Thanks, Ron. That was it's Brian Barber here with the OPWA. I'm standing in for Don, who had to leave to attend the meeting. It was a great presentation and certainly a very challenging project that from the both the planning perspective, approval process, design and construction. And I think a lot of our attendees have encountered similar challenges on projects in the past and perhaps on current ones that they're working on. So it's hard to capture all the complexities of a project like this in just a short webinar, but I think Ron did a really good job in providing an overview. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask Ron or Ben, just please put them in the Q&A section on just by moving your mouse. It'll open it up and we can read through them. We do have a few already that have been submitted, and so I'll maybe just start off with one here. Does the wooden backing on the guide rails affect its behavior performance?
Sorry, does it affect the performance of the guide rail?
Yes.
Or we kept it away from the end treatment. Basically, there might be some, we looked into that a bit, but when it came down to it, we looked at the guide rail was going to protect the barrier from the vehicles and that largely. And as long as it kept away from the end treatment, as long from those 15 protected meters, we felt it was important to protect, even more important to protect the cyclist and the users of the pedestrian path, and especially since they're 0.4 meters lower. This was kind of something we had to weigh. We, looked at some guidelines and looked at some guidelines, did not see anything particular that came out at us that this would be, a spearing potential or something that would crash, unless we did crash testing. But it's a balance we had to take here.
Okay, thank you. How much of the project cost? How much did the project cost? How much of the project? How much the project cost went over the original budgets, or did they?
Yes, they did. The original budgets was, I probably added about, the overall budget 27 million. I probably added 5 million twice. As it became more challenging as we went into symmetrics, the waterfront trail wasn't cheap. And we also had to do a temporary waterfront trail. Even before we started constructing, we had to open up that, which cost a little bit of money too, paving that shoulder, but was important, and maintaining that, So the waterfront trail in itself was probably, the trail was cheap, but the actual base for it and everything, that was more than $2 million, easily. It did, this became the most expensive project, and that's why I have to, give it to our, council, the support, and to Paul G, my manager, and to the director and that at that time. But I have to look at it. is this extra money for Shishko and for, these things, you know, without it, we couldn't have expanded this road. This road goes right through the middle of the conservation area. It goes right through the wetland. We had to embrace, this work.
Yeah, the original, on the construction side, the original tender was just over 10 million, and I think it came in at about 10.8 million at the end. So
That was the second contract. The first
Yeah.
contract was also 10 million, which is expanding the whole into the wetland and using the sheeting,
Mhm.
basically. There was some additional costs for that too.
Was the increased volume of runoff from the increased impervious area to mitigate impacts to the wetlands an issue to be addressed, or was it not an issue considering the site was at the waterfront?
This is a difficult, you might have different, under the under the ministry's new requirements and under various requirements, you have have new challenges. Our challenge here is keep the water away from the open water, especially away from that pond where species at risk, try to keep it 30 meters out. And quite frankly, the cattails are very accommodating. They're very hardy. The salt water is not hurting them at all. And so the idea was to keep it away from those turtles and keep it away from the other things. This is not, you've got 700 meters, 1 kilometer, which is flat originally. It's not easy to drain. This was a difficult problem. So we worked at it, as much infiltration into our granulars as possible, through the swales, and any outlets away from the open water where it could do the most damage.
Okay. Has road mortality gone down since the project was implemented?
Definitely. Like road mortality was, it was affecting the wildlife greatly, and impacting. Basically, it has gone down. We haven't done, looking for CLOCA to do a new study, but we don't see the deaths. Like even our maintenance vehicles, ran over a turtle, prior to this project, just cutting the grass, basically. We says, don't cut the grass anymore, along the side of the road. That isn't a problem now. These walls are working and the barriers are working. There is the odd, we do have an opening at the conservation lands, which has to be managed a little bit, but our mortality is extremely reduced and we're not impacting.
Okay, thank you. Did CLOCA require compensation in land or cash to offset / compensate for the loss of wetland area due to the increased right-of-way width? And if so, how was the amount in form of compensation determined? And then part 2 to the question was, were the compensation options identified as part of the EA or detailed design process?
The compensation options during the EA was largely the underpasses and the wildlife. The species at risk was not in there at that time. And basically, as far as land, we needed land widening on the north side. We are a funding partner. We're a major funder of CLOCA, basically. So basically finance, they wanted to buy some extra farmland in the region. Basically, we made that part of the agreement is that they would, our widening would be all part of it. I even purchased some widening, as a road right of way as part of this project. And the road right of way was basically purchased from somebody who has been passed away 100 years ago. And basically we have to do an expropriation to somebody that didn't exist, which we passed any excess land to the Conservation Authority. As far as compensation, it's not, like, I don't like the word compensation. I like mitigation. Like we weren't looking to, the EA did not get into, compensation land for land. It got into all this, what we're doing and stopping the wildlife mortality and allowing that past wildlife passages and that. The Shishko wetland came in later as part of the DFO, approval, where first they wanted us to go to the north side and expand the pond, which DFO did not accept. And then, you know, they wanted that. They didn't want the Shishko wetland. They would not accept the Shishko wetland for species at risk, you know, for the eastern pond mussel habitat. So we had to expand that north pond. The Shishko habitat, you know, is a compensation or mitigation. I look at it, we're doing a lot going through this conservation area, you know, like in going through this wetland. And I got support, and also is actually written into our species at risk permit that with respect to, you know, spending this 1.3 million on the Shishko wetland. It was definitely, you know, you look at the official plan, our official plan points us in direction, sustainability and everything else. And this was part of it, to expand, you know, to make up for that loss. No, it wasn't written in explicitly. The Shishko kind of was kind of there. Something we worked with CLOCA one-on-one as a partner. And they helped us. They saved money drying the muck and taking excess soils away. I had topsoil I had to get rid of. Basically, we were able to restore an old commercial area as part of their land, which wasn't growing very well. And we were able to place topsoil there, which saved us some money.
Yeah. Stuff for the public to visit for CLOCA, right? So that was kind of part of the offset of this.
Okay, we're closing in on 1 o'clock in a couple minutes. We still have quite a number of questions that have been submitted. We will keep the webinar going past 1 o'clock, provided Don and Ben, or sorry, Ron and Ben are still available. I think they are. So if you want to, if the attendees want to, if you have the opportunity to continue on, then please stay with us. I am also recording this webinar, so it will be posted to our website within a couple weeks. So if you have to leave and you're interested in hearing some of the questions and the answers, then you can check out the video on our website. Okay, so I'll just continue on here. Are there any requirements or plans to monitor the effectiveness use of the created habitat for the eastern pond mussel as part of the permits received from DFO?
So one of the things during the beginning of our project, we had to do a dive and do a whole mapping of the underground of the pond, of the North Pond. We are monitoring eastern pond mussel. You're not necessarily monitoring the mussels, because we found, first of all, we found no mussels that were alive presently in that pond before we started construction. We did, you know, like, so basically we're looking for the host species, basically for the yellow perch and things like that, for the host species for the Glaucidia, and you know, which spreads the eastern pond mussel. So that we have seen evidence, and we're now working with DFO in what to do with our permit, you know, our letter credit. First time ever, we got a letter credit for this project, you know, like with DFO, you know, it's as a municipality, which was strange to us. And we are continuing to monitor with it. CLOCA is slowly doing more monitoring. The more monitoring the host species, not so much the eastern pond mussel. And we're looking for guidance from DFO, you know.
Okay, thank you. If an alternative alignment avoiding the wetland was available within a reasonable distance, would this have been the preferred alternative?
Yes, but there was no alternative, you know, without going 2 kilometers north up to Highway 401. And also we'd have to cut through, you know, an industrial area, which was already starting to construct out in that. And this would have still impacted the wetland. Very possibly, you know, yes, you know, you look at cost wise, we probably could have, diverted the road almost 500 meters north with almost less cost than going through this marsh. But we would have had to get rid of the Victoria Street as it is because this road was killing wildlife. So CLOCA really wanted this project done and to reduce this mortality, which was strongly impacting the environment.
Okay. What factors were considered during the design process to determine the locations of the wildlife crossings?
Basically, two of the wildlife crossings are are the bridges themselves, okay, which would act for both wet and dry, dry passage. The wet passage, well, it picked itself. You saw it was where the old bridge abutments were. It was the connection to the northern pond, okay? So that led to it being the wet passage. The dry passage, we put in halfway between, and definitely it was, making sure it wasn't a direct part of the Conservation Authority parking lot and that. We needed to keep it out, and we needed to make sure it opened up to the north. So we wanted it fairly close to the cattails, but not in them. And we want it fairly close to, that hill area that we created, basically the wildlife. So it practically spoke to itself. And, originally we were looking at dry passage, but as I say, the original EA had much smaller dry passages, almost culverts, which didn't have enough openness ratio and could not guarantee, to the wildlife that they could see the other side.
Okay, thank you. Based on the final contract amount, was it possible to have foreseen these changes before the project commenced?
So during construction, I had got the funding, before when we started the first project, and we basically, we had a good sized contingency. And so those changes that we did during construction, they were dealt with fairly easy. Adding things like the trail and things like that at the very beginning before any construction, and adding, as we knew we're going to get into sheeting or some solid layer concrete or something, that's when we added the money, and that's when we had the support from council and our superiors.
Okay. What was the working days implications on this project?
The working days is, as I say, own your area. I can't say this enough. When I first looked at this was going to be ridiculous. We worked through the winter. We worked through, you obviously could not work in the water during, during March. You had to just work in July, but you also had bats in the area. You also had, basically, we had turtles, right? We had to stop the turtle nesting, which is happening from May into, the early part of July, right? And we also had other birds, we had red-winged blackbirds. So we had to get rid of the cattails, and make sure they were cut down so we didn't have red-winged blackbirds and other, meadowlarks and things like that were nesting at that time. So it's, we did various fencing and various treatments and cutting before our contracts and at various times. Cattails had to cut twice, unfortunately, because the project got delayed a little between, and cattails grow.
Okay. Did any alternative opportunities exist to avoid expanding the roadway through the wetland? And what drove this as the ideal solution?
There was no other alternative. This road was 21,000 vehicles per day. It was maxed out, fully loaded. What are we going to do? Expand 401? We can't get it expanded now, and it's busy as anything. We couldn't expand Dundas. There is no other routes in between. Dundas, which goes through the middle of Whitby, we're actually, it goes through the downtown area. It can't be expanded. There was no other expansion possibilities. And somehow, like we had to get traffic from one side, from Whitby, Oshawa to Ajax and Pickering, right? The heavy trucking route, we got some important, we got some large facilities, industrial facilities in the south of Ajax.
How many contractors were involved in the project?
There was basically 3 contractors. CLOCA did the original paving. They did some original work to do the, pave the shoulder and do the multi-use trail. That was a pre-contract. The large contract at the beginning, the first stage, was constructing the wetland, constructing the sheeting, doing the preloading of the granular, and basically digging out the muck, basically on the north side, expanding that. So we did that pre-work and getting ready for the Lynde Creek Bridge. That was a $10 million construction project by Dagmar. And I really, having Dagmar on that was great. We had two engineers that were very understanding of sheeting and basically in the retaining wall aspects. So then the next main contract was with Esposito, and Ben was heavily involved in this project. Over $10 million also. That was the majority of the road. Okay, that was finishing off the north side, and then doing the construction of the cellular concrete, the bridges on the south side. And then we had the final contract. We also had CLOCA Paving came in after as part of another contract, a resurfacing contract overall, where we did a number of resurfacing. They did the surface asphalt. But then CLOCA Paving also won doing the Shishko wetland, which I have to look at it, like CLOCA allowed us to construct the road and open this before we had that project out for tender. And that kind of cooperation, that kind of working, as we work through the details of how to do this, the Shishko wetland cheaply, as economically as possible.
Are you monitoring the wildlife crossing to see how much they're being used?
Not at the moment, but I think we're going to, I'd like to make sure that we do help. We have monitored it without camera. We should monitor it with camera, especially the dry passage. So the fish passage is working. In fact, the fish passage in the Shishko wetland is working well. We've seen, we do have our Rudy, he has checked out both the pond where the eastern pond mussel, and he has found the couple of host species, and then also in the Shishko wetland. During a flood, basically the Shishko wetland, all of a sudden we came in with water and fish without, but the Shishko wetland is also protected from, so the CLOCA can deal with carp if they have any problems in there, and they can get rid of them or exclude them from the area.
Okay, was there an external environmental consultant involved in the project, or was it all in-house? AECOM had their own environmental consultants, was help with the Shishko and help with the whole design and help with our specifications. During inspection, we've been using Rudy Wormy for years, who's a biologist engineer and who's done very successful works with BTE. And he did inspection throughout. He did training to everybody every contractor, every inspector that was on site. He basically had training sessions where he had, at various times to allow for that. And his inspection and monitoring reports were well read and quite detailed with good pictures. Some of my pictures here are from him. Okay, great. And one final question, which is a 3-part question. How did you work with the Conservation Authority to balance cost versus the natural environment? And part B would be, were they open to concessions and cooperative? And then part 3 is, what was the biggest innovation that was made that made the project a win-win for cost and nature?
So I'd have to say, working with CLOCA, we created that trust with them, and working right from the start. And you know, having open dialogues and looking at the Shishko, looking at the various things, they were actually the eyes of DFO and MNR, basically. Also, you know, like, but basically they were very open. If, for instance, being able, you know, like, it came to me that, you know, I have a problem, you know, when this muck is going to be leaving, it's going to be leaving during the winter and slosh trucks and everything else all over our roads, you know, which we can't clean, you know, our maintenance people can't properly clean the road, you know, and we came to determination using the Shishko wetland, using that farm to the north and being able to, you know, like, rent a piece of that farm to store the muck, which allowed us to use rock trucks and basically to construct that. We love, you know, the fact is the Shishko wetland, I got to think, you know, like, I can't clarify enough how important it was that no excess material left the site. We had to dig this big hole in this new, you know, water area, basically, and being able to not have to take that material off site definitely saved money and basically made our life a lot easier. We're not bringing invasive, you know, it also helped CLOCA, you know, because we're not bringing invasive, our trucks are not bringing invasive species, you know, like Phragmites or something to the site. They can be washed before they come to the site and stay here. And, you know, I think the biggest thing is the cellular concrete on the south side. Was definitely an important feature of our project. And it was, you know, we were starting to construct the north side and we still didn't have a full design and full solution. We were kind of leaned on the cellular concrete. We couldn't move the gas main. Where are you going to move it? You're going to move it under the species at risk, under the water area, or move it into the marsh, you know, which further affects, you know, you have all kinds of difficulty. So through here, we basically were able to lighten the load. Moving down the walkway by 0.4 meters definitely helped. It made the problem smaller. And, but the cellular concrete, I gotta say, you know, like, it was tendering it also, you know, like, here's a sole source, you know, Symmetrics. We actually didn't sole source it. You're able to find other cellular concrete companies. However, Symmetrics is the expert in the field and they really do help. And they gave us guidance during this. How they gave guidance to our contractor. They were there during construction, making sure things were working out and helping us with that solution.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ron. So that takes care of the questions that were submitted, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all the attendees that that tuned in today and that stuck around to the end. Hopefully you found this project as interesting as I did. And just a reminder, we at OPWA host these monthly webinars, so you can check on our website to see any of the upcoming ones, as well as look out for our e-blast that we send out a couple weeks prior. So again, thanks to Ron and Ben for taking the time today to share their experiences on this project. And at this time, I'm going to end the webinar. And
please email me. Also,
yes.
Please email me if you got any questions, or call me. You know, like, I'm open to questions of your, you know, with respect that you may want to use on a project or something, ideas. I'm not a, you know, expert in a lot of these fields. I'm a generalist that's worked with all and learned from all these people.
And I don't think Ron will bill you for his time.
No.
Anyhow, thanks again, everyone, and have a great day. Thanks.
Thank you very much.